Welcome to the Venture Voyager podcast, where we are constantly charting the course of innovation and entrepreneurship. During every episode, we will be featuring luminaries who have a track record of creating disruptive innovation in their respective fields and entrepreneurs who have challenged the status quo and created and scaling ventures that stand out. This episode is sponsored by TurboStart Global, and more about them in the episode. Welcome to our first episode and first segment. We are starting out with a bang, and our guest today is Michael Gorton. We are very privileged and happy to have him as our guest. Michael is a 15 times entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, 4 times award-winning author, and also more famously known as the founder of Teledoc, which is currently serving a $500 billion market. And he's also a mentor, keynote speaker, as well as an advisor to many companies. So welcome to the show, Michael.
Thanks, George.
Yeah, I know you have a very busy schedule. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and share your story and wisdom with the audience we have.
Well, you and I have been changing the world for a long time. I think 25 years probably now, right?
Absolutely.
We've known each other.
Yes.
So it's always a pleasure.
Yes. In fact, every time I follow you I cherish our friendship, but at the same time, every time I follow, you surprise me with more and more interesting things that are happening. So today, 20 minutes won't be enough for us to cover your long journey, but I like to still try and attempt to cover parts of your story. I've actually taken a look at some of your books,
Sure.
that you have very interesting books. So I like to take you back to the beginning, before Teledoc, your first venture and everything. Just very curious, Michael, if you could tell us or the audience about where you started, what was your first venture, what kind of how you transitioned into a serial entrepreneur. That story will be very inspiring to many people.
Sure. I started out as a young engineer working for a power company. Wow. And the world was not going fast enough for me. So I decided to start my own company. I was just finishing law school and had done some international trade work.
So that is not Teledoc. It's a different company.
Yeah, this was way back in the early 90s.
Okay.
And I started an international trade company, and it fell on its face. And you know the old saying that we learn more from our mistakes than from anything else.
That's your book that you have written recently, Columbus Unity.
Columbus Unity, right.
Yes.
Yep. But coming out of that failure, Congress moved the internet into the private sector. And I had built an internet for the university I was at. And so I thought I could do that. And I started a company called Internet Global that grew really fast. So we became one of the top internet companies in Texas, delivered a whole bunch of new technology. And as I was selling that, I joined a group called StarTech, where I met you.
Yes, good old days.
There were a whole bunch of us successful entrepreneurs that were all getting together and collaborating. And the power of that collaboration has carried through so many companies.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the transition from there to a serial entrepreneur would be very interesting. When did you really feel that your calling was entrepreneurship?
Well, if I think about my time working as an engineer in corporate America, it was slow moving. And there was almost no risk taking. But you start work at 8 o'clock in the morning, you finish at 5 in the afternoon, and then you're a free citizen to do whatever you want. That's not the life for me. So it only took even that first company, which I called G Squared, as a failure, I thought, this is the life, because it's passion. You wake up every day with passion. If Friday doesn't mean, yay, it's a weekend, I don't have to work anymore. If you're passionate about something, it's with you all the time. It's in your blood. It's in your family. It's everywhere. And it's a completely different kind of lifestyle than working for the paycheck.
Absolutely. So that's, once you go there, you don't go back to any other corporate life or anything like that. It's a lot more fun, I would imagine.
That is exactly right. It is like a drug that's in your blood. And once you've been exposed to it, you can't ever go back.
That's why you keep doing things that you're doing today. So but that also brings up a real interesting question. These 15 plus companies of your own, you advise many companies. Is there a common theme or principles, guiding principles that you have among your companies?
I want two things. One, I want an idea that's going to change the world.
Okay.
And I want to be surrounded by people who are nonstop, persistent, passionate.
Okay. So passion.
Yeah.
That again carries through. So when you invest in a company, you're looking for teams that are passionate and they believe in an idea.
I can't believe how many investors don't get what you just said. That is, at the end of the day, it's all about the people.
Absolutely.
And there are people with great ideas, but it's the ones who get knocked down, kicked in the teeth, stand up, put a smile on, say, what did I do wrong? Let's go again.
Exactly.
Those are the ones that are winners.
Those who can execute also,
Yeah.
right? That would be the... So one of the things that when I read your book, I didn't realize that your industry that you're going after with the Teledoc story, where it was that regulated. And there were a lot of challenges that you felt actually encountered along the way. So you overcame there. So to the audience here, would be interesting for us to kind of go through the journey that you went through with Teledoc. It's one of the fascinating stories of how you actually started something, and it was something that you encountered along the way, challenges, and how you overcome that. It's a very inspiring story.
In the early 60s, John Kennedy said, we choose to go to the moon. We choose to do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Yeah. And the company that I sold when I first met you was Internet Global.
Yes.
I made a lot of money, called a bunch of friends and said, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. I have money, I'll pay your way, I'll pay your equipment, I'll pay your expenses. And one of the people that was with me was a medical doctor, electrical engineer, who said, it's not right that you made more money in one transaction than I'm going to make my entire career. And so I said, okay, Byron, hit me. What do you want to do? And
so he was a doctor? Or?
Yes, he was a doctor. And climbing Kilimanjaro, we found that unicorn.
Okay.
And the unicorn was Teledoc. It seemed like such a great idea. Yeah. A doctor, a telephone, a medical record. Right. How many problems can we solve if we can just get a doctor like that? And so we built a model. We tested it on a couple hundred patients, and I decided to go to the Texas Board of Medical Examiners because I wanted them to know this is how we're going to change the world.
Right.
And they said, Mr. Gorton, if you build this, you will go to prison.
You're going to prison.
And it didn't stop there. It wasn't just Texas, 17 other states.
That surprised me that was that regulated.
Yeah. Well, they felt like no doctor should ever treat a patient they've never touched.
Oh, okay.
And that was the thing we had to overcome. And in the book you're referring to is Digital Medical Home, where we tell the story of Teledoc. What we said was, you cannot win a battle against a board of medical examiners because they have their own court system, they have their own judges. And so you have to be compliant. You have to figure out what are their pressure points, what do they want? And that's what we did. I joked around a lot in the book and said, no lawyers, guns, and money.
Yes.
If you want to win this battle, go in with thought leadership and people who they respect. And I think we didn't create the idea of telemedicine. That goes all the way back to the 1960s and Dr. Bird and Dr. J. Sanders. And what we did was we figured out, how do we convince the boards that it shouldn't be illegal?
Right. So then do you have a good legal person to work with to go through all these legal challenges?
I did not want anybody legal. So I have a law degree. Okay. It's my dirty little secret. I'm an engineer and a scientist. I identify as an engineer and a scientist, not as a lawyer.
Right.
But as a person who went to law school, I understood enough to either get me in trouble or help solve the problems. Right. And it wasn't really a legal question at the end of the day.
Oh, okay.
I think it really became a question of understanding the strengths and weaknesses in our healthcare system.
Yes.
And the way we handled the legal challenge is doctors have been talking to patients they don't know on the telephone since the beginning of the telephone. Right. And in the medical community, they call that cross coverage. So Dr. Jones doesn't want to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So she gets Dr. Smith to cover for her on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If I'm the patient and I reach her, but this is my normal doctor, they still talk to me.
Yes.
And that's okay. Yeah. And so what we said to the boards was, we're improving that. Oh. Now, Dr. Smith has a medical record. Yeah. They have the ability to be paid for the transaction. They have medical malpractice insurance covered. And so that's how we finally convinced the boards. And it's a good thing, because as we came into the pandemic, the world needed telemedicine.
In fact, when it went public in 2015, it was almost a unicorn. And today it's 1.5 billion market cap, serving like a $500 billion market. So you imagine from the Kilimanjaro days to where it's today, what a phenomenal ride. So
it's been a phenomenal ride. Yeah. And I think right now the Teledoc stock is down a little bit, but I think the market's it's going to recover.
Absolutely.
They just brought in a new CEO. He's extraordinary. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to, you know this because you're also a serial entrepreneur. These companies are our children.
Yes.
And when they're hurting, we want to come and figure out, okay, how do we help our child?
Exactly.
And so I'm very interested in what can I do to help Teledoc or any other company.
Absolutely. So the digital medical home, that whole book fascinated me. I'm like a gadget guy. I actually have most of the gadgets that come out in the market. I'll go and purchase that.
Right.
So there are a lot of these Fitbits, Apple Watch, Oura Ring, all those things are now sitting there capturing so much data, personalized data from my body and other people. Right. So there were attempts one time to be able to get those things stored in some kind of cloud and then use it later, kind of stuff. Microsoft and Google and all those people were trying to do that. But what you have done by reading that book is with Recuro Health, for example.
Yes.
You have taken that whole data and then interface that with electronic medical records and things like that. It kind of fascinated me as a gadget guy. I said, now there is somebody who took all that data and are able to connect. Can you tell us about where your vision is as a visionary in this space? Because to me, that is just the tip of the iceberg and what I can see.
You're exactly right. How is diagnosis done today? Mm-hmm. I don't feel very good. I need to go see my doctor. I tell the doctor my symptoms. The doctor says, okay, I'm going to run these tests on you.
Okay.
The doctor runs those tests, and a week later, I get a call from somebody in the doctor's office saying, you need to come in. They say, stage 4 cancer. You have advanced heart disease. You have COPD. We're catching things when it's almost too late.
So this is because they are measuring data at only a certain point in time.
we don't. Okay, I said I identify as a scientist and engineer. That's the way my brain works. Susie might be a musician. That's the way her brain works. We're not thinking about how we feel, how it impacts whether or not we have disease or not. We need something really simple. And all of the pieces of equipment you mentioned, the Oura Ring and the smartwatches, and they're all capturing data, but what's happening to that data? Exactly. It's sitting nowhere.
Yeah.
My prediction is now think about the scenario I just painted. I went to the doctor, they did some tests, they reviewed the data from those tests, and they made a diagnosis based on that. My prediction is that over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to start seeing data from our smartwatch. So if you go to a doctor right now, they put a cuff on your arm, pump it up, they say 120/70, that's your blood pressure. And they say, okay, you're good. That is a static data point. Right. Imagine this. Your doctor instead sits at the computer and says, I want to see your pulse rate and your blood pressure at 7 a.m. every day for the last 3 years.
So it's a trend line.
Yeah. There's a graphic trend line, right? Yeah. And what we're going to see is every time you start fighting something, your biometrics change. Maybe it's your pulse rate. Maybe it's your body temperature. Maybe it's the blood oxygen level. Maybe it's your blood pressure. Maybe it's your weight. If you think about how we diagnose now, take some blood, look for something in the blood. In 5 to 10 years, what we're going to be doing is all that data from your smartwatch, the $50 scale you step on in the morning in your bare feet, the Oura Ring, whatever it is, it's all going to go into a cloud, and it's going to look at pulse rate, blood oxygen, all these biometrics, and it's going to start seeing things, trend lines that catch cancer before stage 1, that awesome. Catch heart disease long before anything happens. And then you can be thinking about, I'm a musician, I just want to play. And then your digital medical home communicates with you and says, let's get you into the doctor. It's much better to say you're coming into stage 1 cancer and you need to change these 3 lifestyle things than to say it's stage 4 cancer and we're going to do radiation, chemotherapy, surgery. You'll probably die, but we'll keep you alive.
So the insurance companies would be very interested in this because it's prevention way ahead of the disease happening, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would like to say the answer to your question is yes, but a lot of times you have to follow the money. And when do people make money? When you're sick. They don't make money when you're well. Money starts changing hands when you get those big diagnoses. And I think this is something that we've got to inspire everybody to be thinking about, the good side, the healthcare side, not the sick care side.
Yeah. So this whole AI revolution, all this stuff plays right into this analysis of trend lines and predictions and intelligent, actionable items from that thing. So that's the prevention part of it, the prediction thing. Well, I'm also thinking another dimension maybe there. I'd like to get your opinion. Archive this data, like do 100 football players, their data, personalized data.
Sure.
Over time, later on, we can post-process this data to see what did they go through their life in trend lines. So there is a value in personalized data from running backs and other people who got injuries and things like that. There will be data similar to how long did it take for them to recover from where they are. I'm thinking whether the digital medical home concept is fascinating.
Yes. So there are 2 things that come out of the comment you just made. One is, let's say Susie dies of something. Mm-hmm. But for the last 2 years, Susie has been wearing a smartwatch and stepping on her digital scale every day.
Right.
We can go back and look for things.
Yes.
When we try and get new drugs through the FDA right now, we go through a process. We bring in patients, we do clinical trials, we do all of these things. But now think about it when you're looking at biometrics and data. People can already be dead. but their data is still there.
Yes.
We know what they died of. Let's look and find trend lines for Susie and 10 million other people who have been diagnosed with this malady.
Exactly.
And now the concept of clinical trial is going to completely change because we can look at data, find trend lines, and then start using those trend lines to predict. And maybe we have to go through a clinical FDA study once we say, this is what we think happens. But when we have 10 million data points, it's much more significant than 350 that go through a clinical trial.
You're rewriting the future, Michael.
I am.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm trying to drive it. Yeah. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. So speaking of that, you also have delved into science fiction and things like that.
I have.
Yeah, I've read one of those books. Yeah. And is there a sequel coming? I'm very interested in asking you that question.
I am a huge fan of taking hardcore science and making it popular. Right. I used to teach an astronomy class. Back when we first met, I was teaching the astronomy class because people are scared of science. Yeah. And I thought, if I can teach a class of college freshmen, sophomores, and show them that science shouldn't be scary, they should all have a fundamental understanding, not a fear. That was the goal there. And part of writing the book you're talking about is called Tachyon Tunnel. Right. To take something very arcane in science and try and turn it into something relatable.
Yes.
But I think I'm also a huge space buff.
Oh, so and tell us more about your space community.
Yeah. There's actually a connection between space and Teledoc. Okay. In the early days of Teledoc, one of my sales guys knew Buzz Aldrin, who was on the Apollo 11 first mission to the moon. And I met Buzz, we became friends, and a while into our friendship, I called him and said, hey, would you be willing to help me with Teledoc? And he said, well, I don't really know anything about medicine or telemedicine. And I said, that's okay. The reality, and every entrepreneur who's listening to this, remember this point, and that is, I was unknown. Nobody would take my call. But there's not a person on the planet who won't take Buzz Aldrin's call. And so Buzz played a nice role in helping us get Teledoc. When I needed to speak to a CEO and I couldn't get a response, I could get Buzz to call and schedule a meeting. And that love of space carried through Teledoc and helped. And now I'm working with some of the other Apollo astronauts. And there's a space launch company that is building a cloud that will, I think, in 10 years, probably almost all of our data processing will be done in outer space.
Awesome.
Because if you think about data centers today consume a tremendous amount of electricity.
Yes.
Cooling load is significant. And in space, you don't need to worry about cooling.
Yes.
You can get as cold as you need it to be without doing much at all. And the sun is always up, and the solar radiation is significant in outer space. So solar panels, you can drive everything. And so right now, if you think about what could we do in space, do we need rockets to carry things up and rockets to carry things down? All that chemical, all those things are real expensive. But if you have a data center up there, what goes up and down? Information, which you don't need a rocket for.
There you go.
And so you're going to see the beginning of the next AI revolution will happen in low Earth orbit and up in outer space.
So LEO is the most.
LEO, low Earth orbit.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. This is fascinating. You're really predicting the future of where things are going to go. So, just to give some advice to the entrepreneurs in the audience here. So if you stand back and say things that they should be watching out for or getting prepared in the new era of this whole technology evolution that's coming up, what should there be some advice for them would be interesting.
I think that people who have ideas, and if they can verify from the people around them that they are good ideas, build it and don't give up. Think about when we were building Teledoc, the Drug Enforcement Agency came into our offices with guns and badges. just right up the toll road here. It was very scary. As entrepreneurs, we think, we're going to get knocked down and kicked in the teeth. We don't ever think people are going to come into our office with guns and badges and say, we're shutting you down. And I think if you're building something important, stick to it. Stay focused.
Yes.
One other thing that entrepreneurs tend to be is very creative. And to the entrepreneurs who are very creative out there, what I would tell you is stick to your one idea. Don't chase rabbits, because there's lots of rabbits out there, especially if you're...
complicate things. Right? That's make it simple. One of the things that I've known you all this time, you always express the clarity in thinking.
Yes.
So I was wondering if there is things like Occam's razor and things like that you kind of use in you. I heard that there was some kind of discipline that you have been following in your company.
Well, as a scientist and an engineer, you mentioned Occam's razor. So for those who don't know what Occam's razor is, if you have a whole bunch of questions and solutions, pick the simplest one.
Yes.
It's probably the right one. Yeah. That's Occam's razor. And I think it is a great fundamental principle to always follow.
Yeah.
Don't look for complexity, because complexity just makes it more difficult.
So that's the part of the advice you're giving to the entrepreneur, saying, take the idea, keep it simple, don't make it too complex.
Correct.
And stick with it, kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So this is very fascinating. Thank you so much for your time, Michael, for sharing with us. We could sit here and talk for another 2 hours. So this time, thank you very much again. This is the end of the first segment of our episode, number 1. And I would like to have a word from the sponsors right now. The other end of it, we'll have another entrepreneur with his company and his story featured.
We are TurboStart. We're here to assemble the disruptors of today and forge a better future together. TurboStart spans 4 regional ecosystems across India, Middle East and Africa, the United States, and Singapore. We back entrepreneurs with a confluence of network, resources, and strategic interventions, all geared towards scale and sustainable success. Our 5 centers of excellence bring structure to the pursuit of entrepreneurship. Acting as an extension of your team, this holistic ecosystem ensures seamless execution across core functions, including strategy and operations, brand and marketing, tech and innovation, product experience, and business growth. A team of industry leaders, serial entrepreneurs, and domain experts, we believe in creating a network effect, a community you can rely on. We're on a mission to be agile and transformative, to fuel disruptive ideas, to aid entrepreneurs globally, and create value for all. TurboStart. It's more than money.
Welcome back to the Venture Voyager, Episode 1, Segment 2. And we are very happy to have a successful entrepreneur, Andy Asava, as our guest today. He's many things in one. He's a successful serial entrepreneur. He's a CEO of a very exciting company, and he's an author who is writing a book on sales, and it's called Farmers, Hunters, and Assassins. And I'm looking forward to reading the books very soon. And his self-admitted passions are sales and education or teaching are 2 passions he has. So welcome to the show, Andy. And again, you're a very busy guy, and thanks for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you very much, George. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. So congratulations on your new company CEO role, which is SpinSci, I think. I'd like to hear more about your company as well as the transaction, if you're free to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely, George. It's definitely exciting when we take a company from bottoms up, take it to market, scale it up, and then have the endorsement of the investor community believe in us, that they are doubling down, quadrupling down on our vision as we take it to the next level up. And that's kind of the journey of SpinSci here. We have, the nice thing is we are a Dallas homegrown company. And we started with a very strong focus around patient experience, taking a look at how do we take the entire care continuum That's before the encounter. Encounter is the actual touch point with the medical system. Before the encounter, during the encounter, and post-encounter, the entire care continuum. How do we take that experience and make sure we have a consistent workflow that drives that experience across all those patient touches, the digital patient touches that are out there? And we're very excited because the solution that we put together has now been adopted by over 80 health systems. They're not the small mom and pops. These are mid to large health systems that are utilizing our technology. And we are now touching almost 150 million lives every year through our technology and our solution set. But the journey is not done. We've got about 80 health systems in the mid to large space. Just in the U.S., there are 2,100 health systems. So you can see how much more growth we have ahead of us that we want to capitalize
So how long was the journey till today?
It started as initially as a services company. That was about almost 19 years ago.
Okay.
The founder is Rajat Kumar, and he started the journey as mostly as a services organization, then got focused around contact centers. As contact centers and IVRs were coming to the front end of the customer experience at that point. So I met Rajat. I've actually had my own journey, and then I met Rajat about 7 years ago, mostly as an advisor at that point. And what we realized quickly is we have to make a pivot. We have to move from services to a SaaS-based offering, completely cloud-native offering. And we also have to verticalize and get some focus in where we are going to the market. So those are the two elements that Rajat and I kind of put together 7 years ago. And then that 7 years has just been a gold rush for us. Because what happened, especially, and it got hyper-accelerated because of COVID. Right? And we are so glad because we were already cloud native, solution was already up and running. And when COVID came, everybody was trying to scramble on how they execute and deliver digital front door, while all we had to do was turn a few buttons up in the cloud, and we were enabling our customers.
So you had the experience from the services background. Your company was already in services, so you had some background. But you came in a strategic pivot to this verticalized cloud.
Precisely. And it's a tough transition. I'll tell you why. Because services in general are cash flow positive business. But services does not give you valuation and does not increase enterprise value for you. So SaaS, on the other side, chews up a lot of cash, but gives you great amount of valuation and better multiples out there. So when you're already sitting in a company, and you can imagine Rajat sitting in his shoes at that point, it was cash flow positive. He was making great money. But he realized that the future of the company from a valuation and enterprise value perspective is going to start hitting a ceiling unless we do that pivot.
And the multiples for a service company are lower than a product that's...
It's the 1x to almost 7x, 10x multiples that you're looking at.
It's a very strategic pivot you guys made.
Yeah, it's a tough pivot. Not many companies can do it.
Did you have to augment the team to do that transition? For example, services people are not the same.
Yes, it starts with productization, right? It starts with productization, architecture, scalability, and that's where my pedigree was.
Yes.
I started my career. It's kind of a nice transition because I grew up in Michigan.
Yes.
And in Michigan, this was about 32 years ago. I've been in the tech space now 32 years. Okay?
Wow.
Time flies. At that time, there was notion called the glass ceiling, especially for a first-generation Indian like me. There's always something called glass ceiling. And I remember coming to Dallas for an interview with Bell Northern Research, Nortel at that point. And just during the interview process, George, I remember you standing on that stage, addressing all the wide-eyed engineers like me in the whole audience. And I said, wow, that's somebody I aspire to be. That's somebody who's already broken the glass ceiling. That's found out new heights, new echelons that anybody can achieve. And George, you were pretty much of a big inspiration for me. And that pedigree also coming into Nortel, because Nortel was all about carrier grade, right? 5.9 availability. How do you productize and how do you deliver at scale? That is something that's foundational. As you do that transition from services to product, that somebody needs to have in place.
So your own journey had a lot to do with the strategic pivot to...
Precisely, it did.
Absolutely.
That was it.
So when you look at SpinSci today, for example, right? So how many people, how many locations, how many countries?
Yeah,
are you
absolutely. Again, from a development perspective, we are highly focused around 2 centers of excellence. We're about 90 people at this stage. We're growing fast. I've just opened up as we went through a transaction, strengthened our balance sheet significantly.
Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited about it. And we ran a pretty wide process because we realized we were scaling at such a rapid pace that at some point you just have to invest in the balance sheet, right? You can be cash flow positive, take the journey all the way ahead. So we ran a process. We had 50 growth PEs that we talked to. And then we had a strong interest, 10 IOIs, indication of interest, 4 LOIs. So those numbers are remarkable. And the message we got is we are a top decile company. Your gross retention rate, your net retention rate, all your KPIs are in the top decile marker. So, and then after the exhaustive process, we picked the right financial partner with us. And it's Aldrich Capital Partners who we chose out of DC. They have strengthened our balance sheet significantly. The other thing we love about Aldrich is Aldrich has been super successful in the healthcare space. Right, and they bring a deep Rolodex of contacts and relationships that we can further piggyback on and use as a catalyst to grow the company.
So you have an investor who has got domain expertise in your field.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
So not only they're adding financial bench strength for us, but also the domain expertise that they bring to us. And that's yielding in now. We are, of course, hiring to drive the growth. Yeah. We got, like I said, we have about 90 people, 45 in India, 45 in US. It's roughly half-half. And we have opened up another 20 recs as we speak right now.
Yes. So you mentioned you have some of the largest healthcare systems in the US signed up as customers here. So what are your plans to even grow internationally? Are there similar healthcare systems you're going after, say, in the Middle East or Asia or other places?
I think it goes back to the pain points that we are addressing, right? So today, like I said, the care continuum and the digital touch points that the patient has, the problem that we are seeing, at least in the US, the mid to large space, is there's a technology fragmentation that's going on, right? For one solution, like scheduling, patient scheduling, customers are deploying 5-point solutions. That's way too much technical debt that they're taking on. They're fragmented. Systems do not talk to each other. So what we have done is becoming the common workflow orchestration layer that is fully HIPAA compliant and PCI compliant and all the SOC 2 compliance. So it's fully secure, ruggedized infrastructure that we put in place. Now we can address those solutions. And now we can do value-based outcomes for the patients they're touching. That same problem exists globally, right? Same EHR systems are out there globally. And we are in the process of getting GDPR compliance to be able to address the global market.
Okay.
So as part of the financial bench strength we've got is to grow global.
Cool.
And also to go down market too. That's the other vector that we're also looking at.
That's awesome. So if 5 years from now, where do you see SpinSci?
It's exciting times for us. We have actually, starting at the patient access care, that's the first pillar of growth for us. That's our core bread and butter. We are now starting to go on the clinical side, taking a look at how do we make the provider's life easy, right? From all the way from the scheduling to codes and other things. How do we make that life easy that they have to deal with? And then the third one is go on the rev cycle side. So the question is today, if you look at health systems, they're between -3% to 3% operating margins. We want to see how do we make them more profitable? How do we do better revenue collections, revenue cycle management? So that's the patient financial services that we are looking at. So we are looking at those 3 pillars. But our goal is to continue to become the trusted partner for health systems as they navigate the path ahead from a tech perspective.
Awesome. Looking forward to that journey, and all the best to you in your role as CEO.
Thank you.
And so you have another manifestation other than a CEO role. You're an advisor, board member, investor in companies. So tell me more about, your philosophy as an angel investor or board member. what you're looking for? How do you invest in companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing I'll look for is this an acute pain point that they're solving? Right? Is it so compelling that the customers are ready to impart from money and give the money because this is such a critical thing that they need, and that it's not a nice to have, it's a must-have type of an offering. That's the first thing I look for, right? Because if you structure it right, then the market pulls itself for the solution versus you trying to push it to the market. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, look, throughout my career, even at Nortel, I was a disruptor. Whether I was in Asia Pac with Nortel out of Hong Kong, I was trying to disrupt things, or whether I was here sitting in a $2.4 billion business unit, I was always trying to figure out how do we take the next wireless technology and try to disrupt the space. To me, disruption is key, but the way you do that, it's a life cycle. I call it a life cycle of innovation. First thing is you got to challenge the status quo.
Yes.
And if you challenge the status quo, you disrupt. If you disrupt, you innovate, right? And it's a whole life cycle there. And that's one of the things I like to encourage in people to do that. And that's what I look for in the entrepreneur, right? And the team around them is, are they truly looking to challenge the status quo, right? First, acute pain point.
Yeah.
Absolute must. Second thing is, how are they going to solve it, right? Are they going in the good old status quo way, or are they going to look at it disruptive? Are they ready to embrace AI in every aspect of their life, right? And not AI just from a superficial, wordsmithing perspective. It truly has to be ingrained in the deep learning models that they're executing on. So those are a couple of things I look at. Then I look at the financials, go-to-markets, and so forth. Because that is actually an after-the-fact piece. Once you got the first two pieces, the believe it or not, the financials and so forth, that's just an afterthought, right? If you got the right execution engine, it will work. And you got the right advisors and mentors around you, it will work.
Yes.
What people get fixated is the other way around. They start looking at financials first, and they get into drilling that down and saying, well, your financials don't make sense. You're bleeding too much cash. You have this issue, that issue. And they forget about what is exactly the entrepreneur trying to solve, and how are they trying to create a space for themselves in the market.
This is your advice to investors who are trying to pick the right venture to invest in.
Precisely. And it's not just the investors, but also the entrepreneurs who are trying to pitch and get money.
You're right.
Both sides is, obviously, they will always ask you for your financial hygiene. Be ready for it, right? But make sure you get your narrative right up front.
Yeah. So there's another dimension to you. You started as an engineer, and then you found your calling was sales, and you made the transition. So when did you realize that that's where your passion was?
It was a very good question. There was a program actually in Nortel where they took the top 5% folks in the emerging leaders. They call it the Technology Leadership Development Program. I think you had a lot to do with it, that platform. What it did is functionally rotated engineers and other folks and other functional leaders across all the different functional groups. So Nortel was a great platform for me. It got me into from not only R&D architecture, but also product marketing, product management, business development, sales, M&A. They took me to Asia for 3 years. They took me to Europe for 3 years. Absolutely. So when you have global experience, when you cut across all the functions, I had an opportunity, almost an eagle-eye view of which function do I really enjoy the most and which one I'm most passionate about. It turned out to be sales. It turned sales because it is closer to the customer. You got the voice of the customer driving you. You also have to understand your solutions. You have to understand your place in the market. It was one point that was the convergence point for everything, whether it's tech or business or how you become successful in the corporate world. So that's what I was passionate about, and I really enjoyed it.
So when you advise a company or invest in a company, you pretty much have the domain expertise to kind of coach them in that space.
I'm real passionate about sales because to me, it's all about forecasting, credibility in your forecasting, and the science. I'll give you an example. At InfoVista, I was the EVP president there, running a $120 million business, 600 people in 120 countries, right? When you work in that layer, you effectively have to become a data scientist as a salesperson, because it's all data analytics. Sales operations becomes an important role. So I love sales, every aspect, whether it's a startup or a very large organization.
So I can't wait to read your book. So far, hopefully it will come out soon.
Yeah, if I don't continue to become CEOs of companies and running companies, these are things that have been holding me back. 95% of the book is done. Super excited to take it out there.
Yeah.
It's called Farmers, Hunters, and Assassins. Okay. The assassins are the disruptors. They are the ones who are creating the tectonic
I've heard
shift
the
in the
first two
marketplace.
terms before, how farmers and hunters in the sales terminology.
Yeah.
But assassins is something new concept.
Yeah. They are the disruptors. They are the Steve Jobs of the world who come in and completely change the game for everybody around and generations to come.
Yes.
So those are the ones that the assassins is about. That's the persona that we're going after.
So fast forward 5-10 years from now, what do you see happening in the world? Technology and all kinds of stuff that you're able to visualize.
I really view that technology is going to be a key enabler. It's going to change the way we live, and it's going to improve our quality of life substantially. Right? With AI coming in, you don't need to work 40 hours a week. You'll still get paid for 40 hours, right? Because you still have to make a living and so forth. But you could literally work 20 hours a week. You can have an AI bot that's your twin bot that's driving and helping you and enabling you in everything you do. And I think healthcare is going to get totally revolutionized, from the triage to symptom analysis to care delivery, care management, post-care delivery. All the aspects, the entire care continuum, I think are about to get changed in a big way. IoT and sensors are going to be a critical part of it. Electronic medical records and the protocols that they're providing are going to be a critical part of it. Clinical decisions are going to be a critical part of it. There's so much room for innovation, so much work to be done. But we are in great times ahead, if you ask me as a technologist looking at the world.
Absolutely. So if you were to kind of look at the audience and say, are there as pieces of advice you can give them, especially for those who are working in corporate world and budding entrepreneurs, what would be your advice, given your journey that you've done both?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think there's nothing sweeter than direct deposit. Don't get me wrong. It gives you stability and so forth. At some point, and it all depends on each individual and their aspirations and their own DNA, quite frankly, and what they want to do. But if you got even a smaller inkling of how can you change the world, what can you do as a difference, take the leap. Right? Entrepreneurship is the most gratifying things that's out there. Take the leap, but do that with, remember, understand the pain point, understand what you're trying to solve, surround yourself with the right team, get the right mentorship in place up front, and then go from there. And you're bound to succeed. So I think, look, until you don't take a chance, you'll never know. And of course, you understand your graduated risks and so forth, but take the chance. And I think you'll see better, especially apply that corporate experience into an entrepreneurship, and you'll succeed. And you don't need to always be the leader. You could be part of another company that is entrepreneurial in venture and still ride it from that perspective.
Great words of wisdom from somebody who has traveled the world. So that's exactly what this podcast is all about. Venture Voyager is what we call. We're charting the course of innovation, entrepreneurship. At this point, we would like to thank our sponsor as well as the guests who have been here to enlighten us. We'll come up with another episode pretty soon. So before we go, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm based in the Dallas area, and obviously LinkedIn is a great way. Andy Asava, that's a great way to connect with me. And then, of course, I'm at SpinSci, so you can always drop me a note at SpinSci. I'm very adamant about checking emails, andy.a@spinsci.com. And you can definitely connect me over there too.
And these are perfect messages that are for our audience here. Thank you very much, Andy, for spending the morning with us. And
sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, George. And thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much. Stay tuned for another episode coming in the future. In the meantime, please go to the social media or other places where you find this podcast. Do subscribe and also like. Thank you very much, and bye for now.